How's it going, everybody? It's your boy, Lieutenant Dan, here from Unintentional Grounding, live from Orlando, Florida. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the FILA Sports podcast. You can check them out in the description below. We're going to talk a little bit about the FILA Sports podcast and their idea of Don Martindale, current defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, potentially being the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. We'll also be talking about the college football playoff, what's going to be happening in the next 20 minutes or so. Oklahoma and Baylor kick us off with our college football this weekend in their championship game for the Big 12. We'll also talk a little bit about the Pac-12 championship, what happened there, Utah and Oregon last night, with Oregon coming off with a victory. And we'll also talk a little bit about what's going on with the Twitch stream, where I'm doing a lot of stuff over there. And we'll also talk a little bit about what's going on with the college football playoff as a whole and the Falcons' issues and how we can kind of address those and kind of move forward. Before I do, I want to just make sure that I check my sound here. Bia Kuez. And we'll also talk a little bit about... All right, cool. That's working out just fine. Let's go into the chat and let's go say hi to all the peeps. Make sure you share this out to wherever you're coming from. Jock, good to see you. Steel Wings, Dexter Vlash, Raichu for the win. Hey, make sure you guys go over to Twitch. We've got a brand new Twitch setup. It's absolutely awesome. We're going to be streaming later today. Rose Stackson, good to see you, my man. Rise Up, Stay Grounded. Make sure you go over there and you support me on Twitch. It's actually my way of actually making any money at all. This YouTube is not making me enough money at all. So if you like to support the channel or monetarily support the channel, go over to the Twitch, hit that follow button, and maybe even hit that subscribe button if you are so generous over there. I believe it's like $3 or $4 over there to subscribe for a month, and then you get all kinds of badges and emotes and a lot of cool stuff over there. So let's talk a little bit about FILA Sports Podcast and the Don and his proclamation. I would say it's a proclamation that he wants Don Martindale to be the next head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and what he could potentially bring to the Atlanta Falcons as a defensive coordinator, what he does in Baltimore currently right now, and what it could do in Atlanta and where we could go. I think before we really get into a coaching discussion, we need to talk about if a coach comes in here, no matter who that coach is, how smart that coach is, whether that coach is an X and O's guy, whether that guy is someone that, is a player's first coach, someone that's tangible, someone that's flexible, or someone that's just hard-nosed and does what they want to do. I think you have to talk about that GM. And what that GM does for your team, where that GM's trying to lead your team, what that GM is potentially trying to promote for your team. And I think it's difficult for a lot of people, a lot of the time, to wrap their heads around the fact that the GM, the head coach, they have to work in tandem to be able to make things get to a point where it actually works. And the more I hear about Don Wink Martindale, the more I hear about him coming out and giving us this new refurbished defense, this new glorious setup, this new schematic blitzing, this new manufactured sack totals and all this great stuff. The more I hear about it, the more I'm like, it just sounds just too good to be true. Not that it's not a good idea, not that it wouldn't promote winning in this club, not that it wouldn't give us the opportunity to win more, not that it wouldn't give us somebody that's a leader, not only as a player's coach, but someone who's willing to take first, second, third round picks. Doesn't matter where you were drafted or how much money you're making. If he feels like you're not doing your job, he sits you down. I feel that. I understand that. I get that. But if you can't tell me who the GM is, and this is not a roadblock for FILA or a roadblock for any other person, this is just a prerequisite that has to be addressed before things really go through. If Thomas Dimitroff is still here in Atlanta, it's not going to look pretty. It's not going to be Don Martindale that's coming in here, because that's a strong-minded individual, someone who really knows what they're doing, someone who really wants to take control of things, someone that isn't just getting talent for the sake of talent, getting precise individual guys, a lot of guys that they go out into the free agent market into the waiver wires and they pull guys into the team and they grow them, mature them, give them chances. But if Thomas Dimitroff is still here, that personality is not coming to Atlanta. That's just actually the point actually of the whole Martindale discussion, is that it's sweet, it's nice, it's fun to say Rex Ryan and Martindale, and you could talk about Harbaughs and all kinds of other guys. But no matter who you talk about, no matter who you promote, no matter how many proclamations that you have, it does not matter who your coach is if your GM is still the same and he's a stubborn mule and he's not going to move. And he's also kind of a slippery snake as well, that wants to continue doing what he's doing, stay in job security, and continue to promote the same thing. Mike Smith, Dan Quinn, and others like Mike Smith and Dan Quinn who don't have that fire personality, that don't have that alpha personality, and they get trampled on. So if Dimitroff is here, you won't see Martindale hired to the Atlanta Falcons because Thomas Dimitroff will want control of this team. Now, the next question is, if Don Martindale is added to the Atlanta Falcons roster, and God forbid Thomas Dimitroff actually makes a smart move and picks up Martindale as the head coach, and Martindale gets to find his defensive coordinator and find his offensive coordinator, whoever that may be, you run into another problem. And this seems to be also a problem that Atlanta has in general. No matter who the OC is 2 years later, after they've been here, after they've done things with Matt Ryan, after they've been able to work with Julio Jones, after they've been able to work with the talent that Atlanta currently has, whether or not we have a great wall of Atlanta in front of Matt Ryan as their O-line, no matter who is there, that OC will leave 2 years in and go find another job somewhere else. And that seems to be an issue that a lot of guys, whether they're affiliated with unintentional grounding or they're, doing their own thing elsewhere, they're saying that's not that big of a deal. They're looking at it from a perspective of Matt Ryan's final years won't mean anything because no matter what, once they run through Matt Ryan 2-3 years in, he's going to be gone anyway. And I feel that right there more than I feel anything in the entire world, which is the reason why people are looking for another defensive coach is because the defensive coach isn't going to leave. And that is some daddy issues kind of stuff that a lot of fans are promoting. If you bring in an offensive guy, he's going to want his guy at quarterback. I won't argue that fact. I won't argue against that fact. When an offensive coordinator or a former head coach that's an offensive guy comes in and takes the job in Atlanta as the head coach and starts promoting the guys that he wants, he's going to want his guy, his quarterback. And it ain't going to be Matt Ryan. On the other hand, people are so dead set on the reality that they want to save Matt Ryan's last final years that they're willing to get into another defensive guy and run with Ryan for the next 4 to 5 years. And when Ryan runs up his time, then they're like, okay, then we can go get a QB. He'll be run under who knows who will be our offensive coordinator. Nobody knows. Nobody knows at all. So I'm here to say I'm not going to stand for the defensive coach minded aspect. I love the idea of Don Martindale coming in here because he gives you quite a few things. He gives you a lot of blitzing, no bend, don't break, familiarity in both 43 and 34, promotes his players, whether they're undrafted free agent rookies or guys off the waiver wire or first-round picks, doesn't matter who they are, he promotes those guys. I get this sense of Don Martindale is a great guy and looks like he could be a head coach in this league, and that would give us everything that we need. But if your GM's the same, and also you're only doing this because you want to save Matt Ryan's final 4 years, then don't hire Don Martindale. Don't hire Don Martindale if Thomas Dimitroff is still the GM. Don't hire Don Martindale if you're only here to try to save Matt Ryan's last 4 years. Make the right choice no matter what kind of coach could potentially come in here, offensive-minded or defensive-minded. Make the right choice because you know you only have so many years with Ryan. That's a fact. We all have to get over that. We all have to get over the idea that the fact of the matter is Matt Ryan's only going to be here for a couple years. So do not bring in a defensive coach just to save the final few years of Matt Ryan. I'm not promoting that. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be the guy that goes, I want to sign a defensive head coach, a defensive-minded head coach, because that'll fix the major issue that's going on here, and our offense will run with Matt Ryan and Julio. I'm not promoting that. That's not going to be me. That's not going to be me. But when you bring in that offensive guy, you're most likely going to have that offensive guy want his own guy. But that's the point. You have to get over that. You have to get over that. You have to bring it, no matter who the head coach is going to be, offense or defensive minded, you have to tell them, Matt Ryan's our quarterback for the next 4 years, maybe 3. And when that time comes, that's when Matt Ryan will be gone. We cannot pretend like Matt Ryan is a roadblock, whether we have to get a new quarterback or we're trying to salvage Matt Ryan's last couple of years. We have to get over that emotional state in our mind, and we have to go, Matt Ryan will only be here for a few more years. Let's find the balanced coach that makes the right decision. You know, we're not trying to get an offensive coach just to be able to, promote a new quarterback or save Matt Ryan's last few years. And we're not getting a defensive coach that just here to save the defense and help Matt Ryan get over that hump. That sounds silly on both sides. Those are both flawed parts of argument. And I'm not about it. I'm not about getting a defensive coach to save Matt Ryan's last few years. And I'm not about getting an offensive coach just so that we can make Matt Ryan an overpowered beast, but then eventually get Matt Ryan out the paint and everybody doesn't want Matt Ryan to leave out the paint. It's going to happen. That's just the facts. The facts are that Matt Ryan won't be here forever. And so we have to get over that. We have to kind of get over that and go, look, if Matt Ryan's only here for 2-3 years, that's it. That's that. That was Matt Ryan's career with Atlanta. We got a new guy in Atlanta. Whoop-de-doo. So if that's what happens when an offensive-minded head coach comes in here, fine. But we cannot pretend that hiring a defensive-minded head coach isn't going to continue the same trend of Matt Ryan, this Julio and Matt Ryan relationship, and then eventually they're going to just walk. And they're going to get kicked off the paint. I get it. I understand. I get both sides of the argument. But I'm not going to be here to be like, we're not getting an offensive-minded coach because he'll kick Matt Ryan out the paint. That's going to happen eventually. Matt Ryan's old. He's getting older. He has 2 young twin sons. He wants time to spend with them. That's just reality of the situation. So if you're only cock blocking, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, mad, angry Lieutenant Dan right now. If you're only cock blocking offensive-minded head coaches because they'll want Matt Ryan out of the paint, you're already missing the point. We need a balanced, well-thought-out, analytical head coach who's not scared or afraid of whether Matt Ryan needs to get out of the paint or he rolls with Matt Ryan for the next 10 years. You have to get that out of your system. And you have to get out of your system the defensive-minded head coach to save Matt Ryan's last few years. That's it. On a side note, I believe in guys like a Rex Ryan that could come in here and potentially work it. I believe in a guy like a Don Martindale that could potentially come in here and work it. I believe in an experienced head coach in Mike McCarthy that can come in here and work it. I believe in these guys that are experienced. They've been here before. They've done it. And they can come in here and they can work it. So I'm not worried about Mike McCarthy potentially being the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not worried about Don Martindale. But before you can start addressing that issue, whether it's Patman, Don, Mad Mike, Aaron Freeman, doesn't matter where you're from, Rise Up Reed or the Falcoholic, before you can address the head coaching situation, you must know, is Thomas Dimitroff here? And if he is here, then you know that your pool of candidates, strong, heavy, super analytical, balanced, well-thought, well-touted head coaching candidates, that pool will be shrunk down to the feeble, to the easily manipulated, to the minds and bodies of people that may have good intentions, but are more or less pawns in Thomas Dimitrov's game. Prove me wrong. 2 coaches have already done this. Back to back. Back to back. And unless Thomas Dimitrov can get over himself and hire guys like McCarthy, hire guys like Rex Ryan, hire guys like Kubiak, hire guys like Don Martindale, then you will always get the feeble-minded coach, the new experienced coach, the guy that hasn't done it yet. And they will still be under Dimitrov's tutelage. And that's going to continue the cycle, the heavy, terrible cycle that we get every 5 years. 5 years, and God forbid we have to go through another 5 years. God forbid that we have to go through another 5 years with Thomas Dimitrov making poor decisions. But if he were to turn it around, this is the crazy thought outside the box. If he were to turn it around and he were to say, I will hire a Mike McCarthy, I will hire a Don Martindale, I will hire a Rex Ryan, I will hire a Harbaugh, I will hire one of these guys that has coaching experience in the NFL, had success somewhere else, and is bringing in a new, fresh idea, then that's the start where you go, Thomas Dimitrov may have actually learned from his lessons, and he might not be a snake. He might actually just have had bad decisions. But until we know that Thomas Dimitrov can make that choice, can make that offering, then that's your main problem. Don't worry about who the head coach is going to be. Don't worry whether or not that coach is going to be defensive-minded or offensive-minded. Don't worry about whether or not we're going to draft a nose tackle, or we're going to draft an edge player, or we're going to draft an offensive lineman. Don't worry about any of that until you know whether or not Thomas Dimitrov is still going to be here. Because if Thomas Dimitrov is still here, then it's still going to continue to be the same thing. And those who are protecting Thomas Dimitrov and saying that, oh, well, he has had all these good picks and whatnot. If you were to condense it down, if you were to boil it down, if you were to put it in a pot and you were to simmer it down all the way to its very core of what the essence of Thomas Dimitrov is, then you would understand that every single one of his picks has either been forced by Arthur Blank, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, both of our offensive linemen, Jake Matthews, Gary Lindstrom. Those are all Arthur Blank saying, and you can go look back at the articles. You can look back from 2008 all the way to 2019. Arthur Blank, when he said that he wanted offensive lineman, we went into this past draft and got offensive lineman. When he said we needed a premier left tackle, we went and got Jake Matthews, although he started at right guard and then right tackle and then moved over to left tackle. Arthur Blank told him to get that pick. When Arthur Blank said that he wanted to go super air raid, when he wanted a more explosive, that was the quote, explosive offense, they traded massive picks and got Julio Jones. When he said he wanted a real team leader, when he said he wanted a real fresh start for the Atlanta Falcons, he went and got Matt Ryan. Tell me those are Thomas Dimitrov picks. Tell me in some way that all 5 of those picks right there are Thomas Dimitrov picks, because it sure does sound to me that Arthur Blank had his hands on all 5 of them boys. And if you take, and this, people will go, well, if you take all of the good picks out, then obviously Thomas Dimitrov is going to look bad. No, if you look at the facts and say those picks were influenced by Arthur Blank, if you take that influence out, and that means you have to take those picks out, and you look at the body of work he's done from 2008 to 2019, it looks awful. This drafting, his free agencies, his ability to build defense and offensive line, his ability to add weapons to this unit, his ability to keep the right players for the right money, for the right situations, those all sucked. So I'm just pointing. I'm just pointing. Pow. I'm just pointing at Thomas Dimitrov and what he's been able to accomplish. What he's been able to accomplish here in Atlanta. And it's not looking so great. Now, is it? Now, yes, he was able to sign Grady Jarrett. He was able to sign Deion Jones. He was able to keep Vic Beasley here for one more year, which was insane. He was able to pay Julio Jones. He was able to pay Matt Ryan. He was able to keep Jake Matthews here. Yes, he was able to keep Desmond Trufant here for better or worse. He was able to make some moves in situations or a good draft picks here or there. But when it comes down straight to it, it does not matter who the coach is. Doesn't matter what system it is. It doesn't matter what players come in here. As long as Thomas Dimitroff continues to prove that, yes, he can make a few of these, here or there. Oh, he made a good move. He made a good move there. But the whole body of work is bad. It's like getting a rotten apple. Yes, of course, there are some parts of the apple that are still edible, but most of the apple is rotten. So people that want to keep Thomas Dimitroff here want to cut out those good parts and go, see, there is good parts, when the rest of the apple is all just maggots and rotten. And it's like, and people want to get onto the discussion, and no offense to FILA, because he's doing a great job, Don over there, Mario, those guys are doing a great job over there, really searching for another head coaching candidate. But until we know the GM, it doesn't matter whether it's a defensive coach. It doesn't matter if it's an offensive coach. It doesn't matter if Matt Ryan's here for 5 years. It doesn't matter if he's here for 2. It doesn't matter if offensive coach wants a new quarterback or if a defensive coach wants a new quarterback. It doesn't matter if the defensive coach wants to roll with Ryan as long as he possibly can, or if he wants to completely trade every single player on the team. Doesn't matter as long as Thomas Dimitroff is here. And that right there should be the point of emphasis for every single Falcons fan. If you still have Thomas Dimitroff here, you're setting yourself up for the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. It's the one thing that's been here. It's the one thing that's lingered here. It's the one thing that's been constant, the one variable that's constantly been here, the one thing in the equation that's constantly been here, the one number that's been here in its entirety has been Thomas Dimitroff. Thomas Dimitroff, Thomas Dimitroff, Thomas Dimitroff, Thomas Dimitroff. So if you do not get him out the paint, then it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. Just is what it is. So I like the idea of Martindale. I like what he's doing in Baltimore. I don't have a problem with Dan Quinn. I think Dan Quinn is a really good talent evaluator. I think that, unfortunately, he needs to learn his own system. And I don't mean Pete Carroll's system that he's trying to copy or mimic, but I mean he needs to come up with his own system. Has the cover 3 worked for him? Has the cover 2 worked for him? Has his manufactured blitzes worked? To a degree. But Don Martindale, a guy who is all about manufacturing blitzes. He's not about... he's about player freedom, but he's also about we're going to manufacture. It's the whole point of having schemes is to manufacture defenses. Having players that come out and get sacks on their own is cool and fine and dandy, but we write up plays to use the play. And so by manufacturing these defenses and these sacks, he's shown that his system works. There's no other system, there's no other person that's touched that system. And that's a good thing that Don was actually talking about Martindale, is that Martindale, this is his work. This is his baby. And he's willing to adjust no matter what it is. And we've seen easy representations or signals of that. In the Patriots game, he played 7 DBs. When he was playing San Francisco this weekend, he played a lot of linebackers. When he was playing earlier this week, not this week, but earlier this year, playing a couple of faster, more power-oriented teams, he put in big, heavy-set guys. And he loves to switch those around. He loves to put people in the right places. And I think that that's important. I think that's really important. I see I-20 Eric, and I wanted to get out what I was trying to say before I responded to I-20 Eric. But Clemson will finally play a college team sometime next month, getting their free pass to the college football championship once again. Eric, I swear to God, you have been the only person on Twitter that has been going at Clemson every single freaking day and have been looking to try to irritate me. And I love you to death, Eric. I love you, buddy. Thank you for being here. But look, man, I'm just going to say it. It's not Clemson's fault that the ACC is garbo. There are really good teams in the ACC, and they are Power 5 worthy, and they would be contenders in other conferences probably. But right now, what do you want Clemson to do? Move to the SEC? What do you want them to be independent and play things like with Notre Dame? I don't understand. I don't understand how you can be in your conference, especially like the SEC, that has 4 really good teams. 4 really good teams. Everybody else is like middle of the road. In fact, I think that if Texas A&M was back in the Big 12, they'd be kicking it. They'd be leading the Big 12 right up there with Oklahoma and Baylor and kicking it. Okay? But they're in the SEC, which kind of waters it down a little bit. I bet you anything that if Clemson and Georgia and LSU and Alabama and Auburn were all in the same group, most of them would be left out. Most of them, because a lot of them would have losses. But I can't get behind this whole statement of, and I feel the Notre Dame people now. I really do feel the Notre Dame people. The reason why Notre Dame wants to be independent all the time is so that they can play the highest competition with the biggest risk-reward factor. And if they win, they have a straight path to the college football championship. If they lose, then people will go, those are good losses. Being in a conference such as the ACC, and yes, we have Duke. Yes, we have Wake Forest. Yes, I understand North Carolina's not great and almost beat Clemson. Yes, I get it. Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Boston College, they don't float your boat. But that's who we have to play in our conference. You can't down Clemson for playing their conference and their powerhouses because they got out and they won. They won 2 college football championships, 2 national championships from not the skin of their teeth. One of them got dominated, and the other one, they drove down the field like 80 yards and scored a touchdown. I can't get on this bandwagon. I'm sorry, I cannot. I cannot get on this whole Clemson's not a good enough team. They haven't played anybody. Gosh darn it, they've played their whole conference. They've played their whole damn conference. What do you want them to do? What do you want them to do? They did just like Alabama. They got a couple of cream puffs, and then they played their conference. They played out of conference people. Texas A&M, they beat them. What do you want? When they make these schedules in advance, what do you want them to do? I would say the same thing for Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Let's talk about Ohio State being in the same boat as Clemson. Who have they played? Michigan? Minnesota? Wisconsin later today? So Clemson goes undefeated in their conference, and they shouldn't be in the championship game because undefeated is not good enough because their resume is not good enough. I don't get that. So really what it should be, Eric, because now I'm getting just, really what it should be, Eric, is still the BCS. It should still be a popularity contest. It should be Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Auburn in the championship game because any other teams not named those 4 don't matter. Who should be in the championship game? Oklahoma? Who have they played? Who has Oklahoma played? Who has Ohio State played? They played nobody. So it's just LSU and Georgia. That's the only ones that have played actual games. Their resumes actually matter. Oregon, get them out of here. Utah, get them out of here. Oklahoma, Baylor, get them out of here. Clemson, get out of here. None of you guys matter. It's just Georgia, LSU. You know how stupid that sounds? That sounds like some SEC biased. Resume matters. Resume matters. Get your resume, stick it in the trash, and burn it. Because you either win games or you don't. You either win games or you don't. What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? Huh? What are they supposed to do? Should there just be, here's the solution to this. Should they just take all the best teams out of the ACC, out of the SEC, out of the Pac-10, out of the Pac-12, Big Ten, 12 kids asleep under the table conference? Should they take all of those guys and they should just put them all into one conference and they should go, nobody plays outside of this conference, just play the people that are in here because these are the only schools that matter? That's garbage. They haven't beaten a top 25 team because there's no top 25 teams to beat. Because their conference and their schedule dictated that. What do you want, Eric? What do you want, man? You just want Clemson to be out. Okay, fine. You know what? Clemson will probably lose to LSU. They'll probably lose to Georgia. They'll probably lose to one of them. And then you can go on Twitter and you can hoop-dee-door, dem-dee-dar-dar, and go, aha, they got beat. See, they weren't worth it. They were just like Utah last night. Let's talk about that for a second. Utah goes and plays Oregon. Utah heavily favored against Oregon. They had beaten down teams. They're a nitty-gritty team. They kind of actually belong in, like, the Big Ten. The way that they're playing right now. They belong in the Big Ten. And Oregon comes out with spread offense, Chip Kelly-esque stuff, running the quarterback. And Utah had been playing the type of football that was grind them out, beat them up, long drives. And Utah ends up getting cracked in the face by Oregon, by the spread, by the quick running game, by gimmicks. And there's a lot of good players on Oregon's offense. There's a lot of good players on Utah's defense. But if we're gonna be honest, Oregon wasn't worried. Oregon wasn't scared. Oregon said 4th downs, cool, we'll go for it on 4th down. So did Utah. But Oregon was like, whatever. What do we got to lose? We're not going to the college football playoff. We'll just pass on these guys. We'll bomb it. We'll end these dudes' careers. And they did. They did. And Utah got greedy, and they tried to throw a lot of long balls that they're not good at doing. And they got away from their run game, and they got beat. And so Utah is not going to the college football playoff. Whether Georgia loses or wins, the only thing that affects Georgia right now is Oklahoma. If Oklahoma beats Baylor, Oklahoma is almost in. And Georgia has to beat LSU if Oklahoma wins today's game. They have to beat LSU if Oklahoma wins their game. Because Oklahoma, by a record, not their resume, not how many top 25 teams they've beaten, not how their schedule was dictated, not how their conference went. They won a conference championship game. They would be 11-1. They would have only one loss, and Georgia would have 2. Their conference championship game and one of their losses that happened in the regular season. I believe that was against South Carolina, right? If I'm mistaken, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's how that will go. If Clemson loses the ACC championship game against Virginia, then I have no doubt in my mind that they will kick Clemson out of the college football championship. If Georgia, and again, I-20 Eric, I'm trying to be civil. If Georgia beats LSU, it doesn't matter what Oklahoma does. Does not matter. So there's 2 outs for Georgia. Georgia beating LSU, that's the straightest path, and Oklahoma losing to Baylor today. Because the committee will look at Baylor the way they looked at Utah, and they'll go, Baylor, meh. Although that could save Clemson if Clemson loses the ACC championship game for some reason. They're a one-loss team, and Georgia's above them. So it would be like Ohio State versus Clemson and Georgia versus LSU. That's the matchup we would be getting 2 weeks in a row. So that's why I'm sitting here and I'm going, if Clemson goes undefeated, which they did, and then wins their conference championship game, then it doesn't matter what their resume is. They won the ACC championship game. And by the way, they met the other prerequisite, which is go undefeated. If they don't have a very good schedule, go undefeated and win your championship game. Now you're a lock to go in. What spot you're in, I don't know. 4, 3, 2, definitely not 2 or 1, but it's got to be 4 or 3, right? And Georgia beating LSU, that's a straight shot. They're in. They're number 4. They're number 3. One of those 2 spots. If Oklahoma wins today and Clemson loses today, then Oklahoma might jump Clemson, and Clemson will be left out on the street because they didn't have the resume, the schedule, and they lost their ACC championship game. That's how Clemson gets knocked out. So I'm so sick and tired of talking about resumes. When they get on the field and they play the football, I remember not too long ago, but quite a ways away, when a certain Boise State team was told they're going to a big college game because they had a pretty decent record, and they went up against big bad Oklahoma, and Oklahoma lost. You play to win the games any given Saturday or Sunday, or sometimes Friday or Thursday. Doesn't matter when you play, it just matters that you went and played the game. And that's the point. That's the point. Clemson's a really good team. I think the 4 teams that deserve to be in the college championship, or at least in the playoff anyway, should be LSU, Ohio State, Clemson. Ohio State and Clemson, same. And Georgia. That's my feeling. That's my feeling. But the Big 12 still has a game they're playing right now. Let's check in on that. Let's check in on the Big 12 right now. What are they doing? What's going on here? What's the score? What's the score of Baylor, Oklahoma? Oklahoma up 7-0. I'm going to open this up. Who has what? What's going on here? They just scored this touchdown. Jalen Hurts, 2 of 2 for 75 yards. And K. Brooks, 2 carries, 9 yards, and a touchdown. Baylor's already had the ball once and went 2 of 2 for 10 yards and 1 carry for 12 yards. There have already been 2 punts in the game. So that's where we are. That's where we are right now. The college football playoff, everybody wants to shit on Clemson. Everybody wants to say Ohio State hasn't really played anybody, but that offense is amazing, right? It's just going to beat everybody. And nobody wants to admit that Georgia should be in there, win, lose, or draw, and LSU is one of the greatest, if not the best team in college football currently and should be ranked number 1 in the nation. That's where they are. I feel personally that LSU should be 1, Ohio State 2. And because Georgia fans get so upset about Clemson being in front of them, Georgia should be 3 and Clemson should be 4 because they didn't do enough. Even if they win their championship game convincingly, they shouldn't. Even if they win it close, they shouldn't. They should be 4. So it would be LSU and Clemson and Georgia and Ohio State. And we'll see how that goes. That would be my college playoff. That would be how that works. Now, if for some reason, and this is where things get all kinds of weird, if Ohio State loses to Wisconsin today, which is so unlikely, but if Ohio State were to lose to Wisconsin, then what? Well, some polls have them at 2. Most polls have them at 1. Do you take them from the 1 spot and take them all the way to 3? Does Clemson go ahead of them? Does Georgia go ahead of them? If Georgia beats LSU and Clemson wins their championship and Ohio State loses to Wisconsin, what do you do to that? How do they go? Where do you put them? How do you finagle that? Especially if Oklahoma wins their championship game and they're 11-1 with a championship win. What do you do? What do you do? Do you just keep the same 4 teams in there? Does Oklahoma get a shot? Do they leapfrog a Clemson? Do they leapfrog a Georgia? Do they somehow knock Ohio State out of the championship playoff potential? I don't know. If it was an embarrassing loss like that against Wisconsin, if Wisconsin blows them out of the water, which is, oh my God, win the lottery. But if they blow them out of the water, that's a story. That's like, yo, that was a bad loss. Should you be in the playoff? Man, 2 of your prerequisites are bad, are wrong, are not good. You have a loss, and you lost your championship game. I don't know. But if Clemson and Georgia do their work and LSU is a 1-loss team, then you're looking at those 3 going, we're safe. Maybe 1, 2, 3. But then Ohio State's, they've not only lost their championship game, but they've also lost to Wisconsin, who was supposed to be the big champion guy. And if they lose convincingly, or even by a small margin, you got to question Ohio State and go, I don't know about you. I don't know about you. You're weird. You might get smashed by Clemson. You might get smashed by LSU. You might get ripped apart by Georgia. Don in the chat coming at me saying that he mentioned who he wanted as GM. Well, you got to secure the GM first. You can't just bring both of them boys in here at the same time. Doesn't work like that. But I'm with you, Don. I understand where you're coming from, and I really liked your show. It was good. It was very good, very informative. I felt like you could have just left it as a part 1, honestly, because it was well put together. It was well put together. So as this Oklahoma game continues with Baylor, Baylor is driving. Now they've just punted to Oklahoma again. So Oklahoma will be getting the ball. Oklahoma up 7-0. I've got to say, man, the more I look at it, the more I see Oklahoma doing what they're doing, and the more I doubt that, I have doubt in this is playoff time. This is a different football. During the regular season, I was totally down with every game, whether we were winning it by a dozen points or we were, only a field goal ahead. Every single game I felt like we had an opportunity, if you were Clemson fans, had an opportunity to win. Every single game I saw Georgia in, I said, Georgia's defense and their average to above average offense, that will get them through most games. The more I watched LSU, I said, that right there is a playoff caliber team. The more I watched Ohio State, I felt there's parts of this team that can be exposed, but man, are they talented on all sides of the ball. And I want to see what their athletes can do. I want to see what a constructed team with real power football can do against Ohio State when the game is slowed to a snail's pace. And the more I think about it, the more I go, Clemson has their flaws. Their defense is an inexperienced defense. There are times where it looks like it's definitely vulnerable, but their offense continues to do what it's doing and churns. Their defense can make plays. Georgia's offense is the weakness of their team. Their defense is the strength, and that's something to be proud about. I love Georgia's defense and how physical it is, how it just melts you like butter, and then their offense runs the ball, chokes the clock into submission, and I love that. LSU does something very similar on both sides of the ball, although their defense is a little more niche, and their offense has some gimmick plays in it. So there are things that early on, if they try to do a lot of gimmicky stuff or they try to get off of what makes them really talented, which is running the ball and short passes, that LSU team could lose a game, especially against Georgia, especially against Clemson or Ohio State that's constantly spreading them all over the field. And Ohio State has a lot of athletes everywhere, but is that continuity there? And that's the only question I have about Ohio State. Is the continuity there for this Ohio State team? Patman says, I'll keep it real, though. I've seen nothing but Clemson and Miami fans critiquing Georgia as if they know what's going on in Athens. The whole country's critiquing everybody. Let's not try to start to put this in a little pail and be like, there's where all the fish are. That's where all the bad fish are, Because I haven't said anything bad about Georgia. I've made memes about Jake Fromm because he's inconsistent, and Georgia fans know that, and I know that too. And I just happen to be a Clemson fan. But I've been open to all possibilities, no matter where it's come from. And the more I've looked at it, the more I've said, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson are your top four. With Alabama without Tua, they're not the same. Utah, pretender. Oregon, too many losses. Oklahoma's the only other team right now, and they are the same path right now as Ohio State. Bar none. And the other team that is playing them right now that is one step behind them is Baylor, and Baylor is playing them right now, and they're down 7-0 with Oklahoma moving the ball to go get another touchdown. So right now, your only guys that could potentially go to the college football playoff, there isn't going to be any other jumping. The last spot, the last coveted spot, can only go to one of these three teams. Baylor, Oklahoma, Georgia. That's it. There's nobody else. Alabama's too far down the road. Oregon and Utah just played their games, and both of them won't work. Both of them are, A, they've lost too many games, or B, they lost their championship game, and they don't have it. Everything else, any other team currently right now, mostly two-loss teams, and you're not going to add a two-loss team in there if Clemson wins their championship. If Georgia is able to keep the game close, even if they lose it, they still probably would get in at 4, in my opinion. And then also, LSU and Ohio State are just the leaders right now, just because not only did they beat up their conferences, but they're now probably going to win their conference championship games. Georgia themselves is the only one that could change the narrative right now. Clemson losing is only a benefit to Oklahoma or Baylor, and Baylor's probably not strong enough in the minds of the committee right now. That's what I'm hearing right now, that Oklahoma would be the favorite because they're Oklahoma. And they have a superb offense. But at the end of it, if Oklahoma isn't able to win their game, and it looks like they're about to score another touchdown here, Oklahoma won't jump a one-loss Clemson if they're a two-loss team. Not happening. So that's where we're at right now. That is currently the message. So I'll say this, ending the show here, because I'm going to go over to twitch.tv/unintentionalgrounding. Come join us over there. We're building a massive community over there. We're building a real army over there. I want you to join from the YouTube army over to the Twitch army. Keep these two apps close to you, because that's what we do. We keep family close. But I'll end the show like this. Doesn't matter how long Matt Ryan has here. The issues plaguing this team are these, and I quote, an offense that has no identity, even with talent on it. And I don't want to hear from whatever content creator that the only talent that's on here is Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. Bull hockey. There's great talent on this team. You just don't want to recognize it to prove your narrative. That's just that. Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are not the only talented individuals on here. This group is talented, but it has no identity, no scheme, no continuity. Doesn't know what it's doing. It would be much more talented if it had a system. Number 2, this defense is lost and does not have the talent to be able to continue to push forward and motor to get themselves where they need to be. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million times more. The offenses during the regular season can make mistakes. They can make mistakes during the regular season. They are afforded to make mistakes during the regular season to find themselves, to find where their team is, to find out what kind of offense is, to fine-tune it until they get to the playoffs. And once that offensive unit, no matter what team you're rooting for, whether you're a Falcons fan or you're a Cowboys fan or you're a Georgia fan or you're USC fan, or hell, you're Iowa State fan or Boise State, your offense is afforded to make mistakes during the regular season because they're building an identity and they're trying to find themselves and critique and get it to a point where they're making no mistakes at all. But once you go to the playoffs, you can't make any mistakes. Zero. You can make 0, 0, 0 mistakes. Zero. You cannot make any mistakes because when the lights are brightest, when they're hottest, when those lights are shining down on you, you make one little mistake and a defense who, by the way, is not afforded to make any mistakes during the regular season. They have to already know what they're doing. They already have to know what they're doing and be dominant. A defense can come in and make mistakes in the postseason because if an offense makes any mistakes, they capitalize on that, take it, and they score. Defenses are not afforded to make any mistakes during the regular season. They're not afforded to make any mistakes during the regular season. Offenses are, because this is an offensive-driven league. You can make a few mistakes here and make it up the next game because your defense will probably pull you through because your defense cannot make any mistakes. But once they get to the postseason, they can play a little loosey-goosey because this is all we care about. We don't care about the other 16 games that happen. We got here. Slate is cleaned. It's wiped off. Start game one. We are game one when you're in the playoffs. And so a team like the Saints, once they end this regular season, once they are secured a spot into the playoffs and they play their first game, they're going to probably tell the players, we wiped the slate clean. This is the only game that matters. Offense, make no mistakes. Defense, go out there, play loosey-goosey. You can make a couple of mistakes, but make plays. And the Falcons don't have that. The Falcons don't have that identity and they don't have that feeling about them. So number one, no system with talented players on offense. Number two, no identity for defenses and no talent. Yes, there's a couple of guys on there. Maybe I'm playing a different narrative here, but there's not enough talent on this defense at all to say that it's worth a damn. There's a couple of guys, handful of guys, 5 guys, burgers, and fries. There's a couple of guys in my hand that can work. Grady Jarrett, Tack McKinley, Deion Jones, Ricardo Allen, and maybe you add Trufant or Oliver in there, and then that's about it. Yes, there's a couple other guys that do a couple little good things, but Oklahoma scores a field goal. Baylor's going to be getting the ball down to nothing. But the other problem and the major problem that we all have to come to realize and understand is that this team hasn't built well. Free agency, draft, undrafted free agency, waiver wires, practice squad, making the players that they drafted, they brought in, developing them. They haven't done it. Not enough. Nowhere near close. And so I'm telling you right now, if you're a Falcons fan, if you are an Atlanta fan, and you just want to hear the facts and the truth of this matter, the defense needs to be built from the ground up. And if that's Don Martindale coming in here or Rex Ryan coming in here, this defense ain't going to look the same. There's going to be not a lot of the same players on the squad, but the offense will look mostly the same. That's why I keep telling people this offense is going to look mostly the same. A lot of the same players are going to be here. A lot of the cornerstones of this offense are going to be here. It's the same guys every single year because they have the chemistry. They know what they're doing, but they need a plan. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you guys coming through. I'm going to be jumping on twitch.tv/unintentionalgrounding in just a moment. Link is in the description of the video. Check out our other social media pieces, UNGR_show on Instagram, Twitter. Make sure you check out the Patreon. And if you would like to actually have rewards instead of just supporting the channel in total, you can go over and support the channel monetarily by going over to twitch.tv/unintentionalgrounding and subscribing to the channel where you get free emotes from me, someone that is creating your emotes to use in the chat, like Matt Ryan Googly Eyes, and I got a deflated football thing that I'm working on right now. And the more subscribers we get, the more emotes that we get to put out for you guys, and more emote packs. So I'm really excited to be able to do that for you guys on twitch.tv/unintentionalgrounding. Link in the description of the video right here. Go check that out because I'm going live over there in just a little bit. Baylor has the ball. They have taken it out to the 53-yard line. Or excuse me, the 47-yard line. And they will start with the ball with about 4 minutes and 51 seconds left in the first quarter. And we'll see how this Baylor thing goes on, because if Baylor gets completely blown out by Oklahoma, then Baylor was Utah 2.0. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it. Rise up, stay grounded, take it easy, y'all. And I will see you back again real soon. You're listening to nothing but the facts and the truth from your boy, Lieutenant Dan. Peace.